Evening, everybody. Scott Brown here on day 44, up to day 44 of the 90-day Facebook Live Challenge. Have you ever realized that there are some moments in your career that are more important than other moments? Not in the moment that they happen, but those moments that when time has passed and you've gained a different perspective and a different understanding, that you look back over those moments and you say, wow, that thing now says something completely different to me than what it did at the time that it actually happened. And you realize that you've been influenced semi-consciously by something that happened years ago and you didn't realize why at the time, but you let it sink into your soul and resonate with you later, and it became a big deal. And I have one that really sticks with me that matters today, but it didn't matter much when it happened. It was back in 1990, 1991. I was still in college. And I was working at Kmart when I was in college. And I remember the first interview I had. I went and talked to their personnel officer, a lady with a big bouffant hairdo. It was in Clarion, Pennsylvania at the time. She looked like she probably had worked in personnel her entire life, since the late 1940s maybe. And she made a comment to me that at the time I thought was really impressive. She said that 1 out of every 7 people will work for Kmart during their lifetime. And I remember when I heard that, I was like, wow. Man, that's a really big deal. Like, Kmart's a really big deal. They're really influential. There's a lot of people that work for them. This is a really big thing. Years later, when I started to look, when something happened, and I think I was at Bloomingdale's at the time, and that thought kind of popped back into my mind. I remember that conversation I had with that personnel manager. And it dawned on me that it wasn't a big deal that 1 in 7 people worked for Kmart, because that meant that they couldn't hold on to people. And that stat, while Kmart looked at it as a sign of their importance and the volume of people that they had, they looked at with awe because they thought that it was something that showed their strength, I all of a sudden realized was a sign of weakness. That meant that they couldn't hold on to people. And there were probably a lot of really good people who had worked for them and for one reason or another had left. And when I was at Bloomingdale's, I started to change my thinking and change the concept that I worked with and the mental map that I worked with about what it meant to hire people, to retain people, to develop people, and what our responsibility was as an employer, not just to our people, but what our responsibility was as our employer to our customers. Because the experience that we were able to provide to a customer and to an employee, when those experiences resonated with the groups that we were trying to touch, then all of a sudden there was a magical experience that happened within the store as a whole, and everyone succeeded. And I started to think that maybe there was something more to the experience than just hiring somebody, training somebody, putting them into a job, and holding them accountable to a specific standard. That maybe we were going to run out of really good people someday. Because I started to think, my generation, Generation X, we're small. In comparison to the generation before us, the baby boomers, and in comparison to what's happened to the generations after us, to all the millennials and the Generation Y, my generation is really small. So as all the boomers are starting to leave the workplace and before the millennials really come into the positions and gain the experience to work in the C-suites, my generation is the generation right now that is guiding organizations. And there aren't enough of us. But what that means is there are more jobs out there and opportunities out there than there are qualified people and passionate people to fit within the right job at the right time at the right place. And if you make a mistake when you hire somebody, thinking that you're only hiring someone for their skill set, for what it says on their resume, for their pedigree from where they went to school, then you're missing the bigger picture that the experience is what matters, not what they brought to the table. What matters is how they bring what they brought to the table, how they bring that alive every single day. And do they fit within your culture? Do they fit within your company? Do they fit within the team and the organization and the job, the client base, the customer base? Do they fit? And if they don't fit, how do you change what you're doing so that you're able to move on from somebody that doesn't fit, bring in somebody that does fit, and help them develop the skills that they need to be able to fit within that role within your company? Because we don't have an unlimited supply of talent out there. There's a limited supply of people who can really work within jobs and can really prosper, not just financially, but can lead an organization to growth and can lead customers to come to you because you're providing the right experience for them. But it hasn't always been that way. It hasn't been that way at all. So what Kmart thought was that by having 1 in 7 people, that meant that they were an employer of choice. What that also meant is they probably had a lot of people over the course of their experience that had quit but hadn't stopped coming to work yet. People who had come in, realized that that job, whatever the role was, wasn't for them, but still needed the paycheck. And before they left Kmart as an employee, they were still coming to work. And that same phenomenon happens everywhere. I saw it happen time and time again within the retail world when we hired the wrong people, put them into the wrong jobs. And it happened to me. I went to work somewhere that I knew within the first 4 hours when I was in New York City that I had made the worst mistake joining a company that clearly wasn't aligned with who I was as a person, what I wanted to do professionally, and really what I could expect and how I expected people to behave. I quit that first day, but it took me 7 months to actually leave that job. So for 7 months, I was checked out, doing the bare minimum, collecting a paycheck, but I wasn't really engaged and I wasn't doing what I was supposed to do because I could have cared less because I knew in the first moments I was there that I had made a mistake. And how many times have you hired somebody that has that same experience? That they've come in, they thought they were making the right decision, and they weren't. And what do you do about it to rectify that situation? Either to find a better fit role for them or to help them move on to something else, cut your ties, and find the right person for the job. It can be a heart-wrenching experience when you realize you've made the mistake, either as the employer or as the employee. But as we move forward and we realize that there isn't an infinite number of qualified people out there, how we hire, how we onboard, how we train and develop people has to change. Because you can't surround yourself with individuals that have quit but are still coming to work and expect your team, your company, your organization to be prosperous. You can't expect customers to walk in and not feel that tension and that laissez-faire attitude of, I just don't want to be here. Your customers can feel it. Your other employees can feel it. It begins to permeate your organization, and before long, you become Kmart. You become Sears. You become all of those retailers that have gone away because they didn't realize that what they were providing wasn't what they should provide anymore. So what do? Do you focus still on what someone has done in the past, or do you focus on how someone's going to fit within your culture? Do they have transferable skills to provide to you? And is this somebody who you can develop to become the best representative of your organization, your team, your culture, to your customers and to the rest of your people? Because let's face it, within every job, there are things that people bring that they may not necessarily need and that they need but they don't necessarily bring. And that's okay. You can't expect to hire the perfect person every time because you're never going to get a different point of view and you're never going to push your organization and your team to get better. It's okay to hire somebody that doesn't on paper seem to be the right person, but when you meet them, you realize they're the person that your customer and your people need to deal with on a daily basis. Those are the people that you should be hiring and grooming and developing to be the future of your business. There's a saying I've heard for years that says, what happens if we hire and train people and they leave? Well, not nearly as much as what happens if we hire and don't train people and they stay. The choice is yours. What are you going to do as you invest in your people? Are you just going to invest in the way things were always done and just hope that that gets you by? And hope that you don't have an organization that fills with people who quit but haven't left? Or do you want to change how you hire? Look for those people that fit within your culture, fit within what you're trying to do, represent your brand in the best way possible. Create those wow experiences for your customers and for your employees. And maybe, just maybe, you break the curse of turnover, of disengagement, and of the past. I know I've learned from every experience that I've had working, whether it's positive experiences or negative experiences. Sometimes I've learned what to do, and sometimes I've learned what not to do. And your people are doing the same thing. They're learning what to do and what not to do. But if you have the right people in the right jobs, they're going to create an atmosphere that people want to follow them. They're going to create the atmosphere and the environment of what to do. So there's a positive role model, that there's a positive example of how to grow and how to become better. So the next time you're looking to hire somebody, ask yourself, is what I'm doing today going to set me up for success? And is how I view my people and how I view my company really reflective of how the market views me also? Or are you just going to become the next Kmart? Hire 1 in 7 people to work for you and wonder why you're no longer relevant. Have a great night tonight, everyone, and think about what you can do tomorrow to become a better version of who you were today. Take care, folks.